Dear students, welcome to the MOOC on India's foreign policy in a globalizing world. In this lesson, we will discuss about India's economic relation with China. Main objectives of this lesson are to know about Chinese economic development, to learn about India's economic development, to understand the economic relation between India and China. We begin with the first part of the lesson, in which we will discuss about China's economic development. Geography and historical relations compels an uneasy coexistence for China and India, while globalization brings them closer through economic cooperation. India and China are the two largest aspiring great powers on the international scene, which have achieved considerable economic and military growth in the past several decades. The two countries share several similarities: rich culture, vast territory, belong to the third world, share several similar problems such as widespread poverty, rising pollution levels and issues of terror attacks, etc. India had obtained independence from British rule by a transition of power through peaceful negotiations with their erstwhile colonizers. On the other hand, China entered into a civil war between 1927 and 1949 between the nationalist government of Kuomintang and the Chinese Communists, with the latter obtaining victory and coming to power in 1949. India opted for a democratic republic, while China chose an authoritarian government. Their viewpoints regarding world affairs thus differed greatly, deriving from the use of very different lenses to understand the world. Thus, their relations experienced several highs and lows. The bilateral economic relations has remained consistent. Both are rising economically, but they are not rising equally. China far exceeds India in its economic growth and military modernization. China's economy is around 7 times that of India's and is the largest economy in Asia, whereas India is significantly behind. However, economic relations remains one of the key reasons that results in mutual engagement between them. India and China have made advances in their respective economies post their independence. Both the countries started with socialist economic policies. Both countries inherited a host of social and economic issues to deal with extreme poverty, mass unemployment, hunger and population growth. Their economic interaction through trade and foreign investment began in 1980s. Despite the irritants in the bilateral relationship, China still holds the largest trading partner status for India, and India too is one among the top 10 trading partners for the former. Let us discuss about China's economic development. China's economic development may be divided into two phases. The first from 1949 to 1978, which was characterized by common ownership, central planning and regional economic self-sufficiency. The second phase since 1978 is characterized by an opening up of the Chinese economy. During the pre-reform era, China's openness to the outside world was severely limited, with its merchandise exports ranging from $0.82 billion in 1952 to $9.75 billion in 1978. These exports were mostly in the category of primary goods. Capital goods ranked first in the list of its imports. Agriculture comprised of around 70% of the national economy, and the economic system was largely based on self-sufficiency. After 1950, private ownership of productive means was strictly prohibited in favor of collective or state ownership. This killed most of the incentive aimed at hard labor for making private gains, thus reducing the inventive spirit of economic production. Further, scientific knowledge and technical know-how was kept at bay. This mindset is reflective of a psychological fear in the erstwhile colonized, which were subject to constant exploitation and humiliation by the developed Western nations. China was no exception to this mindset. However, some changes crept into the system during the early part of 1970s when the government realized that the Chinese economy was falling more and more behind the rest of the world. Therefore, the regime reduced its discrimination against investments, at least in the coastal regions, and improved its economic interaction with the capitalist economies. The major transformation in the economic system, however, came with the Deng Xiaoping era. Chinese economic reforms in the Deng Xiaoping era opened the doors for Chinese economy to the world. It also provided China with the scope to learn and emulate scientific knowledge from the Western countries and other Asian countries, which had invited foreign capital and technology to modernize its economy. The motto was development of socialism with the Chinese characteristics. It was realized that the income of Chinese nationals needed to be seriously improved to ensure the continued legitimacy of the communist government and regime in the eyes of the people. The government subsequently established a number of areas for foreign investment, including the special economic zones, open coastal cities, the economic and technology development zones, the delta open zones, the peninsula open zones, the open border cities, and the high-tech industry development zones. These zones offer preferential policies and incentives to attract foreign investment and encourage economic growth. They became hubs for manufacturing and export-oriented industries. The establishment of these zones provided the trigger for massive inflows of foreign investment, primarily from companies in Hong Kong and Taiwan. At the same time, China promoted its socialist market economy concept. The changes brought an entrepreneurial boom that resulted in the emergence of huge number of entrepreneurs and venture businesses within China. China soon witnessed the presence of several multinational foreign companies on its land, and along with the easing of several restrictions, there was a massive growth even in private enterprises. This paved the way for China becoming integrated with the world. Thus, with a curious mixture of modernization in economic reforms and its consequent benefits and repercussion, China progressed on the world stage from poor country to the most powerful economic power in Asia and second most in the world, next only to the United States. China's shift towards a market-oriented economy allowed for competition and innovation. State-owned enterprises faced competition from the private sector, fostering efficiency and growth. China's economic reforms resulted in increased trade and integration with the global economy. China became known as the world's factory due to its manufacturing capabilities. China's GDP growth was remarkable, averaging around 10% per year, lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty and making it an economic powerhouse. I hope you learnt how China developed its economy. We will discuss about India's economic development and India-China economic relations in the next video. Thank you.